history of Slovakia, also the neighboring countries, and about the history of Central Europe. But again, we are again back by the topic of history, and the history, quite a new history, the history of the Second World War in Slovakia. Probably you've heard it, that Czechoslovakia during the 20th century was divided twice. Yeah? For the first time before the Second World War, for the second time in the year 1993. The first time and also the second one, for the second one, the people who lived in Czechoslovakia, they weren't asked. Yeah? They didn't have the chance to vote if they want to be together or not. Yeah? It was only a political decision. For the second time, 1993, it was a political decision of the Czech and Slovak politicians. Yeah? But before the Second World War, it wasn't only a decision of the Czechoslovak politics. The Czechoslovak politicians, they had to actually accept the situation that other politicians from other countries decided to divide the country and to give one part of Czechoslovakia to Hitler. Yeah? It was the difficult situation before the Second World War. Hitler wanted more and more from other countries. In Czechoslovakia, during the first Czechoslovak Republic, so it means before or between the First and Second World War, the second biggest nation in Czechoslovakia weren't the Slovaks, the biggest were the Czechs, yeah? But the second biggest nation were the Germans. Yeah? There were quite a lot of Germans in Czech part, known as Sudetendeutschen, Sudeten Germans, and in Slovakia, Carpathian Germans. And these Germans, they wanted, or they were together, most of them, yeah, with Hitler. They wanted to be the part of the Reich, German Reich, so Germany, if you could say. And therefore, before the Second World War, one part of Czechoslovakia where a lot of Germans lived, so it means on the border with Germany, was involved into Germany. Yeah? And Czechoslovakia get much smaller, and later it was divided into so-called Protectorate Böhmen-Mähren, so it means it was occupied, the Czech part was occupied by Germany, and in Slovakia, for the first time in the whole history of the Slovak nation, so the Slovaks received their own country, their own state, with the Slovak president, government and parliament. But during the Second World War, in middle of Europe, such a small country, yeah, it wasn't independent. So the government of Slovakia collaborated with the Germans. Yeah? And we were then on the wrong side of the history. We produced, for example, already at that time a lot of weapons for Germany. In Bratislava there was the refinery for producing oil also for Germans. Yeah? Therefore Bratislava was bombarded by Americans, not the Germans. Yeah? But at the end of the Second World War in 1944, yeah, not all of Slovaks were on the side of Germany, of Nazis, but a lot of them, they rejected this direction. Yeah? And the army, Slovak army, started to fight against own government and against the Nazis. Yeah? Not only then the soldiers, but also the common people. And the Slovak national uprising was announced in the radio here in Banská Bystrica. So it means it started here in this town, Banská Bystrica, on 29th August 1944. Therefore, till today, this day is one of the biggest national holidays. It's a free day. We don't have to work on that day. And a lot of politicians and diplomats from Slovakia, but also from the neighboring countries and other countries, come every year to Banská Bystrica to commemorate and to celebrate also the Slovak national last time. In other countries, maybe it was harder than here, but it was a disaster for the peaceful life of nations in Czechoslovakia and in Slovakia too. I told you yesterday, Slovakia is not only a country of Slovaks, but we have still and had in the past bigger minorities than today. One of the minorities were also the Germans. Yeah? The Germans, I told you yesterday, they came or they were invited to come to the country already in the 13th century. So it means they lived here for generations, yeah? Together with the Slovaks and with the others. So the Germans came also to this area as the miners. Yeah, I will tell you more about the mining history then later in the old town. And for example, I live nowadays in a small village. At that time, in the Second World War, the village, it was a village of 1,500 inhabitants. Nowadays we have 125. Okay? Because the Germans who lived there for generations, they had to leave the country after the Second World War. So it means that during only a couple of years, so the whole situation changed. For example, during the Second World War, during the Slovak National Uprising, my village and the neighboring village were German villages. Some partisans with Russian soldiers came to these villages. They captured some civilians, common people, yeah, and they were murdered only because they were Germans. Yeah. In another valley, neighboring valley of my village, maybe 5 kilometers far from me, yeah, there are other Slovak villages, yeah, and then German troops came to these villages, and because the people helped the partisans who fought them in the mountains, so the German troops, they burned whole two villages totally burned down, and the people who lived there, all of them, they were murdered. Yeah? And it was only during a couple of years, yeah, couple months, the political situation and the whole situation in the society changed. Because you are German, you are not the good one. Because you are the Slovak, you are not good one. Yeah. And I think it's very important to speak about this history because maybe you know, maybe not, but I think everybody knows it. Nowadays, the situation in the society, I think it's a little bit, how would I describe it? Yeah, we are a little bit afraid, yeah, what direction it's going, yeah, and therefore I think here on this place, it is very important to know it, that we are people, not Germans, not Americans, not Slovaks, we are people. Yeah. And I think all of us, for us, what is important for you, your family, children, that's important also for the Slovaks, for the Hungarians, for the Czechs, for all of us. Yeah? And therefore I think we should work together and not against each other. For memorial, there are some villages, the names of the villages, that were burned down during the Second World War because the people helped the partisans. For example, the village, the neighboring village of my village is this one, Klak. Yeah. Then really all of the people, they were murdered, not only the men, but also the women and the children, all of them. Yeah. Then we continue on this side, on the wall. Here we have the memorial, where we can see the nations who were involved in the Slovak National Uprising. Not only Slovaks, but together 30 nations. The first one on the top is the Americans. Yeah? It was really one of the biggest uprisings. So the Slovaks and the others, they fought for 2 months against the government, against the Germans, but this uprising was defeated. But till the end of the Second World War, the partisans stayed here in the mountains, in the surrounding, and they fought till the end of the Second World War then against the Germans. And then others memorials. The first one here is to commemorate the victims of the Holocaust. Before the Second World War, we had quite a big Jewish community. At around 140,000 Jews lived on the area of Slovakia. During the Second World War, when we had the government that cooperated or collaborated with Nazi Germany, Slovakia was the first country on the whole world that sent the Jews to the concentration camps. Yeah? Then after the Second World War, during the time of communism, I've never heard about it. So this was the bad part of our history and nobody mentioned it, yeah? So after the political change, so I learned for the first time that Slovakia sent the Jews to concentration camps as the first country on the whole world. Yeah. Therefore, nowadays the Jewish community is very small. At around 70 or 80,000 Jews died in the concentration camps from Slovakia. And a lot of Jews who then came back, so they emigrated during the time of communism to other countries, to Palestine, a lot of to USA or to Canada. Yeah. Therefore, the Jewish community in Slovakia is very small. Only 2 synagogues are open for the religious purposes, and it's in Bratislava and then in the second biggest town in Slovakia, in the east, in Košice. Then the other memorial is for victims of the Roma Holocaust, the Roma or the Gypsies. One of the minorities we have in Slovakia are the Gypsies, and they were also not the right person during the Second World War. And it's not so famous or not so well known as the Holocaust of Jews, but also a lot of Gypsies died in the concentration camps. And the last one, this is the Tomb of Unknown Soldier. Yeah. This museum was built already in the time of communism, at that time, very modern. Slovakia with Czech Republic, they are still quite conservative country. Therefore, at the end of the 60s, 1969, 15 years after the Slovak national uprising started, this building was built as the seat of the Museum of the Slovak National Uprising. So very modern. Yeah, I like it very much till today. I think one of the best museums we have in Slovakia. Unfortunately, at the moment, the main exhibition in the main building, it's closed. It's under construction. Therefore, here you ask if it's possible to visit it in the free time. If you want, you can go then inside. One small part here next to the reception is still open. So if you are interested for the history of the Second World War, so you can go inside. Yeah. If you are then again interested in this history, I was surprised. I found a web page of the World War Museum in New Orleans, and I found a great article about the Slovak National Uprising. So if you want to know the details of it, so I can recommend you this web page. It's really, really very good. Yeah? Okay, so we can continue.
Well, in New Orleans in World War II.
Oh, when I went to New Orleans, it was not, I haven't seen it yet.